Ukraine's defense forces continued to hold the defense on the Kupiansk front Kharkiv Oblast, and they also advanced and secured positions on 3 fronts during the past day. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 6 o'clock on the 7th of July. Details: According to confirmed information, the Russian Federation launched missile attacks on Ukraine during the past 24 hours, using 11 Kalibr cruise missiles. Anti-aircraft missile units and Air Force fighter jets destroyed 7 missiles, but 3 Kalibr missiles hit Lviv and 1 more missile hit a private house in Cherkasy Oblast. As a result of the Russian terrorist attacks on Lviv, 7 civilians were killed, and more than 35 suffered injuries of varying degrees of severity. More than 35 houses, over 250 apartments, 10 school dormitories, an orphanage, 2 higher education institutions and other civilian infrastructure were damaged or destroyed. In addition, Russian forces conducted 57 airstrikes, including 4 attacks using Iranian-made Shahed attack drones. All 4 kamikaze drones were destroyed by the Ukrainian air defense system. The Russians also deployed multiple launch rocket systems in 67 more attacks. In particular, the Russian army shelled peaceful settlements in Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Dnepropetrovsk, and Kherson Oblasts. Russia continues to focus its main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts. 30 combat engagements occurred on these fronts over the course of the past day. On the Severshina and Slobozhenshina fronts, Russian forces conducted an airstrike near Hadish in Kharkiv Oblast. During the day, they carried out mortar and artillery attacks on more than 15 settlements, in particular in the vicinity of Stary Verki, Iskryskivshina, Katerinivka, Zapsalia in Sumy Oblast and Cherneshina, Odnorobivka and Hoptivka in Kharkiv Oblast. According to the General Staff, Ukrainian soldiers are firmly holding the defense on the Kupiansk front. Krasny Persh, Fyholivka, Novomlinsk, Vorokna, Zapadna and Kyslivka in Kharkiv Oblast were attacked from artillery and mortars. On the Lyman front, during the past day, Russian forces relied on air support while attempting to push Ukrainian defense forces out of their positions in the area west of Karmazinivka in Luhansk Oblast, without success. The invaders carried out airstrikes near Karmazinivka and Nevsky in Luhansk Oblast and Terny, Ivanivka and Fedorivka in Donetsk Oblast. Over 15 settlements, including Nevsky, Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast and Verkhnekamiansk, Berestov, Rozdalivka in Donetsk Oblast, were hit by artillery fire. On the Bakhmut front, Ukraine's forces successfully repelled Russian attacks near Berkivka in Donetsk Oblast. They were under dense fire from Russian aircraft and artillery. Russian forces conducted an airstrike in the vicinity of Ivanovsky. At the same time, Ukraine's defense forces continue to conduct offensive actions south and north of the city of Bakhmut, entrenching themselves at the reclaimed positions. Over 20 settlements, including Vashukivka, Bodanivka, Ivanovsky, Klashivka, Oleksandro-Shultin, Bila Hora and Delivka in Donetsk Oblast, were affected by Russian shelling. On the Avdiivka front, Ukraine's defense forces continued to hold back the Russian offensive in the vicinity of Pervomaysk in Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces conducted airstrikes near Novokulinov and Avdiivka in Donetsk Oblast. At the same time, they fired using artillery on more than 15 settlements, including Karamek, Zelane, Berdichi, Avdiivka, Pervomaysk and Karlivka in Donetsk Oblast. On the Marinka front, under Russian artillery fire, Ukrainian defenders repelled all Russian attacks near the city of Marinka. Russian forces launched an airstrike near Krasnohorivka. They bombarded more than 10 settlements, including Krasnohorivka, Heorhivka, Maximilianivka, Hostre, Marinka and Pobeda in Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near Novomikhailivka in Donetsk Oblast. They carried out an airstrike near Vuhledar and attacked more than 15 settlements, including Blahodatna, Vuhledar, Zolotaniva, Shakhtarsk and Vlika Novosilka in Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces on the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts are focusing their efforts on preventing the advance of Ukrainian forces. They carried out air attacks in the vicinity of Vlika Novosilka in Donetsk Oblast, Novodorivka, Chervona Krinsia, Novodanilivka in Zaporizhia Oblast, and Zimivka, Dachi and Komyshiny in Kherson Oblast. Russian forces used artillery to attack more than 30 civilian settlements, including Malinivka, Uliapol, Zaliznikny, Yahorivka, Mala Tokmichka in Zaporizhia Oblast, Marhanets Romata in Dnepropetrovsk Oblast, Zolota Balka, Sadov, Antonivka, Priozern in Kherson Oblast, and the city of Kherson, or Romata, is an administrative unit designating a town, village or several villages and their adjacent territories, ed. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense forces continued to conduct an offensive on the Melitopol and Berdyansk fronts, reinforcing their recently captured positions and engaging in counter-battery fire. Over the course of the past day, the 6th of July, Ukrainian aircraft struck 8 clusters of Russian personnel and carried out one more strike on a Russian anti-aircraft missile system. Units from Ukraine's rocket forces and artillery struck 1 cluster of Russian personnel, weapons and equipment, 1 ammunition storage point, 6 artillery units and 3 electronic warfare systems. Russian forces attempt to push Ukrainian armed forces out from their positions on the Lyman front, General Staff report. Russian forces are focusing their main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Information is of 1800 on the 6th of July. Details: over the course of the 6th of July, Russian occupation forces conducted 41 airstrikes and deployed multiple launch rocket systems in further 42 attacks on positions of Ukrainian forces and civilian settlements in Ukraine. In particular, the Russian army attacked civilian settlements in Kherson and Kharkiv Oblasts. Russia continues to focus its main efforts on the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka fronts. 20 combat engagements occurred between Russian and Ukrainian forces on these fronts over the course of the day. Operational situation on the Volyn and Polishcha fronts remains largely unchanged. There is no evidence that Russia is forming new offensive units on those fronts. Units of the Belarusian armed forces are carrying out operations in areas near the border with Ukraine, while units of the Russian armed forces that completed training on Belarusian training grounds are being transferred to Russia. Russia continues to maintain its forces on the Severshchina and Slobozhanshchina fronts. Ukrainian forces are continuing to hold the line on the Kupiansk front. On the Lyman front, Russian forces conducted aircraft-supported offensive operations in an attempt to push Ukrainian forces out from their positions in the vicinity of Bilohorivka and Karmazinivka, Luhansk Oblast, but were unsuccessful. On the Bakhmut front, Ukraine's defense forces repelled Russian assaults in the vicinity of Ivanovsky and Bilohora, despite heavy shelling and airstrikes. On the Avdiivka front, Ukraine's defense forces are continuing to hold Russian forces back in the vicinity of Pervomaisk, Donetsk Oblast. The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported on July 7 that Russia had lost 232,810 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. This number includes 510 casualties Russian forces suffered just over the past day.